We turn now to dive further into a story we brought you last week on another Supreme Court decision. Justices sided with the Trump administration by limiting lower courts' ability to block his executive orders with nationwide injunctions. Trump's order called for denying citizenship to the U.S.-born children of undocumented immigrants and temporary visitors. Justices didn't rule on Trump's order, but on the lower courts that had issued nationwide injunctions on the order. In a 6-3 decision, the court ruled that lower federal judges had overstepped their authority by imposing those injunctions. President Trump contends that the 14th Amendment, which grants citizenship to those born in the U.S., was intended solely for people of African descent and was never meant to extend citizenship universally to everyone born within the U.S. There are concerns being raised by many immigration rights organizations about the Department of Justice's memo, which was released in June, that asks agents to prioritize denaturalization. It states that the DOJ may revoke a person's citizenship if they illegally procured naturalization or willfully misrepresented who they are. It also states that they revoke citizenship of individuals who pose a threat to U.S. security, further unlawful enterprises of criminal gangs, as well as those who engage in war crimes, killings, or other serious human rights abuses, including human trafficking. Earlier, I had the opportunity to speak with Paul Hunker, a private attorney and former chief counsel for U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, in Dallas, Texas, about the Trump administration's border policies. Take a look. Paul, can we start with President Trump's claims about birthright citizenship? Is he accurate that its original intent was never meant to extend citizenship universally to everyone born in the U.S.?
Reading the wording of the amendment, Abby, it's clear that the amendment meant to say that if you're born in the States, you're a citizen of that state and you're a citizen of the United States. He's going to lose on the merits of the issue.
Now, many organizations are concerned about the ICE memo that calls for prioritizing denaturalization. Is there room for abuse by agents enacting this? And will naturalized citizens have due process, or do they have reason to fear?
Well, it's interesting, Abby. Often in the immigration world, the deck is stacked against us in representing non-citizens. The law is very favorable to the government. Often we have the burden to show the person merits relief or the person should get to stay here. But in the context of denaturalization, the government has the burden. They have to show almost at a criminal standard, maybe not quite a criminal standard, but they have the burden to show that the person should be denaturalized. So there's a lot of due process for people in federal court proceedings when the government is trying to take away their naturalization, take away their citizenship.
That's good to hear. And as the former employee of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, you represented ICE agents and provided legal counsel. Can you briefly tell us about who you saw coming into the U.S., what their needs were, and what the cases you were covering were about?
It's so diverse, and I think that's one of the things that I think some people, in particular, I think the Trump administration is missing, that there's such a world of difference between someone who just came into the United States in the past year, the past couple of years, and someone who's been here 25, 30 years, family ties, church ties, community ties. And in most ways, ICE is not treating them differently. If they come into ICE custody, they're not releasing them and they're deporting them. And so when I was with ICE, I would see all sorts of different cases. And a lot of the cases, we would advocate strenuously that people should be removed, that they were recent entrants or they were criminals or they were threats to the community. But what we could do, which the ICE attorneys and the ICE officers frankly can't do now because the administration won't let them, is exercise discretion and say, okay, you've been here 25 years, you have a pathway to get a green card, you've got a lot of family ties, we're not going to seek your removal. Right now, ICE is saying, sorry, we're going to detain you and we're going to deport you, and maybe we'll release you if the immigration judge orders you released or a federal judge orders you released. But absent that, we're just going to seek to remove you.
And what do you think led to them not having discretion now?
Well, in part, it it was lax immigration enforcement by the Biden administration. The numbers were extraordinary. People who came across the southern border, and unfortunately, there was a counter reaction. It's sad. I think in some ways, I think Obama had a good. President Obama had sort of a good outlook on his immigration enforcement. We removed a lot of dangerous people during that time, and removed a lot of people on the border. But maybe he went a little too far when he proposed DAPA, which would give perhaps 5 million people legal status. For example, the parents of people who came in under DACA, and that led in part, I think, to Donald Trump getting elected. And then I think in some ways he went too far to the right. For example, well, maybe the right is the wrong way to put it, but things like family separation and some of the travel bans, I think he went too far. And then I think that led President Biden to go too far to the left in different things that he did. And then again, now we have President Trump, I think, going too far the other way. So it's sad. I think immigration enforcement has often been this pendulum that has gone the extreme each way with each new administration.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned this pendulum movement, especially when we're talking about individuals who have human dignity. In paragraph 1867, the Catechism states that the cry of the foreigner is one of the sins that cry out to heaven. As a Catholic and someone who has worked on these border issues, can you give us the bigger picture here about welcoming the stranger?
Yes, I mean, big picture, our society needs to revise the laws, I think, to allow a lot more people to come to the United States. It's good for our country to have many immigrants coming here. Our country is underpopulated. The birth rate is not high enough. So we need a lot more legal immigration and give people who are not criminals and have family ties and can contribute to our society, give them a pathway to come here. I think that the Catholic social doctrine, one of the principles of the Catholic social doctrine, is the universal destination of human goods. And the United States, as many of my clients will say, has so many goods, employment, safety, the rule of law, freedom of religion, freedom of expression. And many countries don't have that. And so not simply as a matter of charity, but as a matter of justice, our country should allow a lot more people into the United States. I think we do need a good border. I think some of the things Trump has done have been over the top, like not letting people apply for asylum, for example. I think there's things we could do to have a border that would still respect people's right to apply for asylum. And I also think that this idea of solidarity, that, okay, sure, someone who's been here 20 years, they're here illegally, they're not a U.S. citizen, but they, at a deep level, they're part of the community.
Well, Paul, thank you for just bringing this thoughtful lens to the conversation.